Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are doing something a little bit different. We are performing an autopsy.
An autopsy. That's a pretty grim way to start a Monday morning.
Maybe, but I think it's necessary. We're performing an autopsy on a prediction that everyone, and I mean everyone, got completely wrong. If you rewind the clock to, say, late 2023 or 2024, there was this universal consensus about the year we are living in right now.
The Great Replacement.
Exactly, the Great Replacement. The narrative was so simple, so clear. By 2026, AI was going to be doing pretty much everything.
Right.
We were supposed to be suffering from mass technological unemployment. Robots would be writing our code, handling our customer support,
Right.
maybe even recording this deep dive.
It would all be sitting on the beach, collecting universal basic income, or, more likely, standing in the unemployment line while the algorithms just took over the entire economy.
Right. But we've been digging through the stack today, specifically a document called the Salford ROI Guide, and a really dense briefing from Oxford Economics dated January 2026, and the patient on the table.
Well, the cause of death wasn't what we sought at all.
No,
Yeah.
not even close. It's actually fascinating. We're looking at data that describes what economists are now calling the outsourcing recession of 2025. But that name, it's a bit of a trick, isn't it?
It really is. Because when you hear recession, you think economic collapse. You immediately think the robots finally took all the jobs.
That's the narrative.
But let's look at the numbers. The Oxford Economics briefing highlights a specific statistic from the first 11 months of 2025 that just stopped me in my tracks.
This was the number that made me stop and reread the page 3 times. I thought it was a typo.
Me too. So in that period, there were roughly 55,000 job cuts in the United States that were explicitly blamed on AI.
Right.
Companies put out press releases, CEOs went on TV, and they all said, we are letting these people go because automation can do it better, faster, cheaper. And 55,000 jobs. It sounds massive. If you just read the headlines, or you were scrolling through Twitter, your flag, you would think the prophecy had come true. The robots were finally here.
But you absolutely have to look at the denominator. That's the key.
Precisely. Because that 55,000, it represented only 4.5% of the total job losses reported in that period.
Wait, hold on. Let me say that again. 4.5%. It's basically a rounding error. That means 95.5% of people lost their jobs for the boring, old-fashioned reasons.
Exactly. Weak demand, lingering inflationary pressure, supply chain hiccups that we were still feeling, and frankly, the hangover from the massive overhiring everyone did back in 2021 and 2022.
The post-pandemic hiring boom.
Yes, but, and this is the really cynical part that I think we need to unpack, companies used AI as a shield, as an excuse.
The source calls it corporate theater.
It's a brutal term, isn't it? Corporate theater. But think about it from a CEO's perspective. Just put yourself in that boardroom for a second. If you have to go to your shareholders and say, we messed up, we hired way too many people, our sales forecasts were wrong, and now we need to cut costs to survive, that looks like failure.
Complete failure. The stock drops. You probably lose your bonus.
But if you go out and say, we are strategically restructuring our operations to pivot toward an automated AI-first future.
Oh, then you look like a visionary.
Exactly. Suddenly, you're not failing. You're innovating. You're cutting the fat to build the machine of the future. So a huge chunk of those layoffs were tagged as AI-driven when they were really just bad management hiding behind the latest buzzword.
That is incredibly cynical, but it makes so much sense. So the outsourcing recession wasn't a recession caused by robots at all.
No.
It was a recession of expectations.
That's the perfect way to put it. It was a massive bubble of hype that just popped. Because here's the other side of that coin. Companies did try to replace people. They really did.
Oh, they tried.
They fired the support team and installed a cheap chatbot. They fired their copywriters and got a $20 subscription to ChatGPT. And then they sat back and just waited for the profits to roll in.
And what happened?
An absolute disaster. The Salford ROI Guide is brutal on this point. They call it the era of the $3 per hour keyboard warrior.
That's not a flattering term.
It's not meant to be. Companies found out the hard way that raw AI, without any human guidance, without any nuance, it doesn't build a brand. It actively destroys it.
And we saw this with the big Google updates.
Oh, the scaled content abuse penalty. We'll definitely get into that later. But essentially, the internet got flooded with absolute garbage, and the algorithms, and more importantly, the customers, completely rejected it.
So let's just recap the intro here. The robot takeover failed spectacularly. The cheap, unsupervised, throw it over the wall outsourcing model failed. But businesses still need to save money. We're still in a tight economy. So what's the third option?
And that is the mission of this deep dive. We aren't just here to debunk the past. We are looking at the solution that emerged from all that wreckage. The sources call it the Smart Save Outsourcing Model, or my favorite term, the ROI model.
Return on intelligence.
Return on Intelligence and Operations. And to make this really concrete for you, we are going to trace the story of a specific case study, a company called VAConnect.
And that's pronounced VAConnect, the letters.
Correct, VAConnect. They're a South African managed agency founded by a woman named Karen Van Zyl. And they are the perfect lens to view this whole shift because they represent the move away from I need cheap labor to I need an intelligent partner.
And this brings us to what the sources are calling the dark horse of 2026. Because usually when we talk about outsourcing, my brain immediately goes to two places, India and the Philippines.
That's the traditional duopoly. For 20 years, that's where the work went, no question.
But the sources are just screaming about South Africa. They're calling it the geography of competence. So why the sudden shift? Why is everyone suddenly looking at Cape Town and Johannesburg instead of Manila and Bangalore?
It shifted because the criteria for success have completely changed. In the old days, 20 years ago, success was just find the cheapest possible hourly rate, full stop.
Right. Labor arbitrage.
Exactly. Today, success is about seamless integration. The Salford Guide breaks this down into what it calls the 3 unfair advantages that South Africa has right now.
Unfair advantages. I like the sound of that. What's number one?
Linguistic sovereignty.
Okay, let's really unpack this because like I said, lots of people speak English. India has millions of English speakers. The Philippines is famous for it. What is so special here?
Linguistic sovereignty refers to the fact that for 16.5 million people in South Africa, English isn't just a subject they learned in school. It's a primary language of government, of business, of media, and of daily life.
So we aren't talking about just functional English like being able to read a technical manual.
No, not at all. We're talking about native speaker fluency with, and this is key, very neutral accents. It's the kind of English that is immediately and easily understood from London to Los Angeles.
The accent thing is huge. The sources talk about something called the accent economy.
It's a sensitive topic, but it's a real business factor. You can't ignore it. The source quotes a bunch of Reddit users from the Entrepreneur subreddit, and it's fascinating.
What are they saying?
You have people complaining about VAs from other regions who technically speak the language, but they just miss the cultural nuance. They don't get the jokes. They don't understand the sarcasm.
They miss the subtext, which is where all the important communication happens.
It's everything. And then you see the threads about South Africa, and the tone completely flips. One user wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, "My VA from Cape Town is better than the last 2 full-time assistants I hired in Chicago. No accent issues, gets all the cultural references, and actually improves on my ideas rather than just executing my scripts."
That distinction, improving the idea versus just executing the script, that is everything. That's the entire difference between a robot and a partner.
It is. It's the whole ballgame. And it ties directly into what the guide calls cultural bandwidth.
Cultural bandwidth, explain that one to me.
Think of it like a radio signal. If you are working with someone from a vastly different culture, the signal has static. You find yourself having to explain things that should be obvious.
Right.
If you say to your UK team, "Hey everyone, remember it's a bank holiday Monday," everyone immediately knows what that means for the schedule, for deadlines.
Or in the US, it's the Thanksgiving crunch time. You don't have to explain the pressure.
Exactly. They just get it. A South African VA has the bandwidth to receive that signal clearly. They grew up consuming Western media. They operate in a very similar Western business construct. They don't need a diagram to understand why Black Friday is a stressful time for a marketing team.
Whereas in some other regions, you might get a polite nod, but they don't feel the urgency. They don't have the shared context.
They don't have the context. And that leads directly to the second unfair advantage, time zone arbitrage.
Arbitrage usually makes me think of Wall Street, of making money on a price difference. What does it mean in this context?
Here, it's about the value of your energy and your focus. South Africa is on GMT +2.
Okay, map that out for us. Why is GMT +2 the magic number? What makes it so special?
Because it is the Goldilocks zone. It's just right. If you are in the UK or Europe, it's effectively the same business day. You are working your 9 to 5 perfectly in sync, no late night calls.
Okay, that's a clear win for Europe.
But the real magic is for the US East Coast.
How so?
You get that crucial morning overlap. You can have your daily stand-up meeting at 9:00 a.m. New York time, and it's 3:00 p.m. in Cape Town.
So they're still at work, still in their workday.
They're at work, they are wide awake, and they've already had their coffee. They've probably already cleared half their task list. Compare that to what the industry calls the vampire schedules that are so common in Asia.
Vampire schedules. That sounds absolutely terrifying.
That's what the industry calls it. To match U.S. business hours, a worker in Manila often has to start their shift at 10 p.m. or even midnight local time. They work through the night.
That sounds miserable. I can't imagine doing my best work at 3 a.m.
It's awful. It completely disrupts their circadian rhythms. It leads to incredibly high burnout rates. And just being selfish for a moment, as a client, do you really want the person handling your most sensitive data to be working against their own biological clock?
No, I barely function after 10 p.m. I definitely don't want to be balancing spreadsheets or talking to my customers then.
Exactly. So with South Africa, you're getting a professional who is working in the daylight. That sounds so simple, but the impact on error rates, on creativity, on cognitive function is just massive.
Okay, so we have language, we have culture, we have time zone. What's the third advantage?
The educational infrastructure. South Africa produces about 160,000 university graduates every single year, and about 60,000 of those are in IT and engineering.
And we aren't talking about diploma mills here, right?
Not at all. We are talking about institutions like the University of Cape Town, Stellenbosch University. These are schools that compete on a global stage. So you have this deep recurring talent pool.
So you have a highly educated workforce, speaking native English with a neutral accent, working in your time zone. It sounds almost too good to be true.
And the economic numbers are backing this up. The South African BPO, that's business process outsourcing market, hit $1.85 billion in 2023. It is projected to basically double to $3.6 billion by 2027.
Wow.
It's contributing roughly 9% to the country's entire GDP. This is a serious, mature industry.
That is massive. Okay, so we know where to go. Now let's talk about who we work with. Section 2, the VAConnect deep dive.
Right. And this is where we really have to distinguish between the gig economy and a true managed service. They are not the same thing.
Not at all. Because I think a lot of listeners, when they hear VA or virtual assistant, they immediately think Upwork or Fiverr. And I have to be honest, my own experiences there have been, let's say, mixed.
Mixed is being very polite. That is what the source calls the platform problem. Upwork is fundamentally just a database of strangers. When you hire from there, you are the HR department.
You have to do all the work.
You have to source them, vet them, interview them, test them, train them, manage them. It's a full-time job in itself.
The source had a fantastic quote from a UK entrepreneur about this exact thing. It was something like, hired 3 VAs from Upwork in 6 months. The hidden cost of my own time fixing everything they broke. Priceless.
That is the reality for so many people. It's the revolving door of freelancers. You hire someone, you spend 3 weeks training them, they ghost you, and you have to start the entire painful process over from scratch.
So how is VAConnect different?
VAConnect was founded by Karen Van Zyl to solve exactly that problem. It actually started as a different company, Limetree Consulting, way back in 2008 and then rebranded in 2014.
And her whole philosophy is quoted in the guide. We're not here to be the cheapest. We're here to be your left and right hand.
That is the managed service difference in a nutshell. They've grown to over 25 dedicated professionals now, which makes them Africa's largest managed virtual assistant agency. But the word managed is the secret sauce.
So what does that mean practically?
It means they don't just give you a name from a database. They pre-screen every single candidate. They do rigorous personality assessments. They do aptitude tests. The leadership team interviews them directly. By the time a candidate is presented to a client, they've been through a multi-stage vetting process.
Okay, so the quality control is there from the beginning.
Right. And once they are in, they aren't just left to fend for themselves on an island. The source details some of these really cool internal programs. We have to talk about VA Varsity.
Yes, VA Varsity. How do you pronounce that?
VA Varsity. It's their proprietary learning platform. Think of it like a highly specialized internal Udemy or Coursera, but it's built specifically for the tools that modern businesses actually use.
Okay, but why is this so important for me as a client? Why should I care if my VA is taking online classes?
Because technology is moving too fast for any one person to keep up. When ChatGPT rolled out its big multimodal features, or when Notion AI released that massive update last Tuesday, how do you ensure your freelancer knows how to use it effectively?
Usually I have to stop what I'm doing, record a Loom video, and teach them myself, which takes hours.
Exactly. You're paying for their training. With VAConnect, That upskilling is mandatory, and it's centralized through VA Varsity.
Hmm.
You aren't paying for them to figure it out on your dime. They are trained and certified on the new tool before they ever touch your account.
That's a huge value add. And then there's the wellness side of things. They have something called the Atomic Energy Wellness Program.
I love this. It sounds like a superhero team, but it's actually a program focused on diet, exercise, and mental health for their staff.
Which, let's be honest, is usually the first thing ignored in the traditional outsourcing world. That's usually all about burn and churn.
Completely ignored. Usually these workers are treated like disposable cogs in a machine. But the expert view here, and it's clearly Karen's philosophy, is that burned out, stressed out talent produces terrible work.
Of course.
So VAConnect actively invests in the physical and mental health of their team. They see it as a direct ROI factor, not just a fluffy perk.
A happy worker is a productive worker. It's not rocket science.
Precisely. And they even have a formal system for it, a two-way happiness program called Vapiness.
Vapiness, like happiness.
Yes, VAPiness. It's a system that tracks satisfaction metrics for both the client and the VA. The goal is to spot any friction or dissatisfaction early and prevent burnout and turnover before it ever happens.
That's proactive.
Hmm.
And speaking of turnover, there was one feature that really stood out to me in the guide, the stand-in coverage system.
Ah, yes. This is the game changer for anyone who has ever built their business around a single freelancer. We've all been there.
You have that one person who knows everything.
And if your freelancer gets sick or their internet goes down or they just get a better offer and ghost you, your business grinds to a halt.
Right. You're completely stranded. It's a single point of failure.
With VAConnect, because it's a managed service, they have a stand-in system baked in. If your dedicated VA is sick for the day, the agency provides a same-day replacement from their team.
And does that new person have any idea what's going on?
They do,
Yeah.
and that's the key. Because they use standardized systems and documentation like Bitrix 24, which we'll get to, that replacement can step in with institutional memory. They can see the project boards. They know the priorities. You, the client, don't feel a gap.
That is a level of peace of mind you can't really put a price on, but we are going to try to put a price on it. Let's talk numbers. Section 3, the economic math.
This is where we have to get really honest about the word cheap versus the concept of ROI.
All right, I'm with you on the geography. I'm with you on the culture and the managed service model. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the money. Because when people hear managed service, they hear expensive. They think premium. If I go on Upwork right now, I can find someone who says they'll work for $5 an hour. Why should I pay more than that?
That is the classic trap. The guide calls it the price tag fallacy.
Okay, defend that. Why is it a fallacy? $5 an hour sounds pretty good.
Let's look at the true cost of employment analysis in the guide. Let's start with the alternative. Let's say you decide, I'm not outsourcing. I want a local person. I want to see them in the office. You go out and hire a mid-level marketing coordinator in the UK or the US. What's the sticker price on that salary?
I don't know, maybe $55,000 in the US? 35,000 pounds in the UK. Somewhere in that ballpark.
A reasonable starting point.
Yeah.
But that number on the offer letter, it's a lie.
A lie. That's a strong word.
It's an illusion. It's not the true cost. As an employer, you aren't just paying their salary. You are paying employer taxes. You are paying national insurance or Social Security. You are paying for their benefits, their health insurance, maybe a 401k match.
Okay, fair point. Those are the loaded costs.
Then you have to add all the infrastructure costs, the laptop, the software licenses for Slack, for Microsoft Office, for Adobe, the desk they sit at, the electricity they use, the coffee they drink in the break room.
It all adds up.
It adds up fast. The Salford ROI guide actually crunched these numbers. The total direct cost for that $55,000 employee is actually closer to £50,500 in the UK, or a shocking $78,000 annually in the US.
$78,000? That is a significant jump from 55.
A massive jump. And that is before we even talk about the indirect costs, the hidden costs. Such as your time. How much time and money do you spend on recruitment fees? How many hours do you personally spend interviewing candidates? And once you hire them, the data shows a manager spends 20 to 30 hours just in the first month getting that new hire up to speed.
Onboarding, yeah.
If you bill your own time at, say, $200 an hour, that's another $6,000 hidden cost right there. Not to mention the turnover risk. In 2025, the average turnover for a role like that was 30%. You could be doing that all over again in a year.
Okay, so the local hire is way more expensive than we think. We get that. Now let's compare it directly to VAConnect. Be specific. What does this managed service actually cost?
Let's look at their flagship package, the full-day marketing VA. This is a dedicated professional working 150 hours a month exclusively for you. The price is 32,250 Rand.
32,250 Rand. Okay, for the listeners doing the mental conversion in their heads, what does that look like in US dollars right now?
Of course, exchange rates fluctuate a little, but it consistently hovers around $750 USD per month.
$1,750 a month. So annually, that's what are we looking at?
You're looking at about $21,000 a year.
Okay, well, let me just put those two numbers side by side. The true cost of a local hire, $78,000. The cost of a managed full-time VAConnect professional, $21,000.
That is a $57,000 difference. That's a 74% saving. I mean, you could hire 3 full-time VAs for the price of 1 local junior employee and still have money left over for a company retreat.
But, and here is my skepticism creeping back in, am I getting 74% less value? Usually you get what you pay for. If I'm paying a quarter of the price, am I getting a quarter of the quality? That's the fear.
And if this were just a random freelancer on Fiverr, I'd say yes, your fear is justified. You would absolutely be getting what you pay for. But you have to remember the managed part. Remember VA varsity. You aren't getting a random person, you're getting a professional who is trained on the exact same enterprise-level tools that your local team uses.
So the argument is that the output quality is comparable, or even better because of the focus, but the cost basis is just radically different because of the currency arbitrage.
Precisely. And for an executive assistant, the math is very similar. That package is 37,500 Rand, which is about $2,030 USD per month. The savings are just as dramatic.
And the source mentions they also do software engineers.
They do, though that model is slightly different. That's more of a permanent placement service. They charge a one-time fee, around $5,700 USD, to find you the talent. But then the ongoing salary savings on the engineer themselves would be massive year after year.
But you always say it's not just about the hourly rate.
It's never just about the hourly rate.
Right.
If you just look at the blended hourly rate, which ranges from about $17 to $60 depending on the specific role, you're still missing the bigger picture. What you are buying is concentrated productivity.
Concentrated productivity. Explain that concept. I like that phrase.
Think about a typical day in a physical office. There's the commute, there's the water cooler chat, there's the birthday cake in the break room, there's the I have to look busy because the boss is walking by.
All the friction, the performance of work.
Exactly. A remote managed VA doesn't have any of that friction. The 150 hours you're paying for is 150 hours of focused, deep work. It's logged, it's tracked, it's entirely output focused. It's often equivalent to a full-time in-office employee's actual productive time.
And then there's the final piece of the math, the opportunity cost. I love this calculation from the guide.
This is the one that really hurts.
Yeah.
This is for all the founders and small business owners listening right now.
Walk us through the founder's dilemma calculation.
Okay. Imagine you are a founder. Your billable time is worth, let's be conservative, $200 an hour. If you are spending 15 hours a week doing things like scheduling meetings, answering basic support tickets, or formatting spreadsheets,
Which I definitely do. A lot more than I'd like to admit.
then you are personally burning $3,000 a week of your own value. That is $12,000 a month that you are effectively setting on fire because you are doing $20 an hour work at a $200 an hour cost.
When you put it that way, it's actually painful to think about.
It should be. So if you pay VAConnect $32,250 Rand, roughly $7,750 to reclaim that time, you aren't spending money. You are netting over $10,000 a month in recovered value. You are literally buying your own brain back so you can focus on growing the business.
Buying your brain back. I like that. But this brings us to the final piece of the economic puzzle, the multiplier. Because we started this whole episode talking about AI, and we have to bring it back in.
The AI multiplication effect, this is where it gets really exciting.
The source makes a very bold claim here. It says, a skilled VA plus the right AI tools equals 3 employees from 2023. That sounds like an exaggeration.
It sounds like it, but when you look at the actual workflows, it holds up. This isn't about human or our AI. It's about finding the optimal human-AI ratio.
Okay, I want to see it in action. Walk me through a specific common business task. Let's take content creation. In the old days, like way back in 2023, how long did it take to write a really good, deep dive, well-researched blog post?
If you were doing it right, from scratch, the research, the outlining, the drafting, the editing, the SEO optimization, you were looking at 5 hours minimum, maybe a full day for something really comprehensive.
Okay, 5 hours. Now show me the VAConnect way in 2026 using this model.
Total time, 1 hour.
1 hour from 5. Okay, prove it. Walk me through that hour, minute by minute.
It's like a relay race between the human and the machine. Step 1, the VA opens ChatGPT or Claude. They don't just say, write me a blog post about marketing. That's the amateur move.
Right.
They feed it the source material, the meeting transcripts, the target keywords, the audience profile. They use the AI to generate a detailed, structured outline. Time elapsed. 10 minutes.
Okay, so in 10 minutes, we have a solid structure, a roadmap.
Step 2. The AI drafts the body content based on that detailed outline. It does the heavy lifting of putting sentences together, of structuring paragraphs. That's another 10 minutes. So 20 minutes in, you have a 2,000-word first draft.
And I have to stop you here. That draft is going to sound like a robot. It's going to be generic. It's going to lack that spark, that human element.
100%. And this is the critical point. This is where the Smart Save model completely diverges from the cheap AI-only outsourcing model. If you stop there, you'd have garbage.
Scaled content abuse, as Google calls it.
Exactly. But the VAConnect VA doesn't stop. Step 3 is the human polish, or what the source calls the injection of soul. The VA now spends the next 30 minutes rewriting, editing, and enhancing that draft.
What specifically are they adding that the AI couldn't?
They're adding the things the AI doesn't know, the real stuff. Our client, Client X, saw a 33% increase in leads after we did this. Remember when we tried that A/B test last quarter and it failed? Here's what we learned. They inject the specific brand voice, the humor, the empathy.
The stuff that actually builds trust and makes it real.
The experience, exactly. Then a final 10 minutes running it through Grammarly for a final polish, checking for flow, and you are done. 60 minutes.
So you get a human quality, experience-driven piece of work, but the human didn't have to break their back doing the 80% of grunt work that can be automated.
And that is precisely why it's a 3x multiplier. One skilled VA, armed with this stack of tools, ChatGPT Plus, Midjourney for images, Notion AI can genuinely do the work of 3 unaugmented humans from just a few years ago.
What about something like social media? That's a massive time suck for most small businesses.
The gains there are even more dramatic. The AI can analyze your past engagement data and generate 50 content concepts for the next 2 weeks. The VA's job is to act as a curator. They pick the best 10, add the human touch, the humor, find or create the visuals using a tool like Midjourney, and then schedule it all via Buffer.
And the result?
2 weeks of high-quality social media content planned and scheduled in about 75 minutes.
That is just wild. And market research, I assume it's a similar story.
Exactly. Using AI tools like Perplexity or Claude for competitive analysis is a game changer. The AI can scan the websites of 15 competitors, find pricing trends, identify feature gaps in their products. The VA's job is to validate that data against their own industry knowledge and then write the 2-page executive summary for the founder.
And how long does that take?
About 80 minutes versus what used to be 2 full days of manual Googling and spreadsheet making.
We should probably mention the specific tool stack here, because it seems like VAConnect has a standard kit that they train everyone on.
They do. And this is where that VA Varsity platform is so crucial again. The standard stack includes the pro versions of these tools, ChatGPT Plus, Claude Pro, Midjourney for visuals, Notion AI for building an internal knowledge base, Bitrix 24 for project management, and Zapier for tying it all together with automation.
And because of VA Varsity, the VAs are trained on updates to these tools almost immediately.
Yes, that's the key. The tools change monthly. If you aren't training constantly, your skills become obsolete. This model ensures you're always using the cutting edge.
But, and this is a really big but, you can't just let the AI run wild. We touched on this in the intro, the idea of slop.
This is probably the most important point in the whole deep dive. This is the human judgment factor. Technical proficiency with a tool isn't enough. You need what the guide calls tool selection judgment.
What does that mean in practice?
It means knowing when to use Midjourney to create a hyper-realistic image and when to just use Canva because a simple graphic is more appropriate, and Midjourney can sometimes look too AI-generated. It means knowing when to use Claude for creative writing versus using ChatGPT for coding a simple script.
And, of course, catching the hallucinations.
Oh, absolutely. That's a primary job now. AI lies with total, unshakable confidence. You need a human expert to look at a statistic it generates and say, hang on, that doesn't look right, or to catch a subtle tone inconsistency that would completely destroy trust with a client.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, the humanization mandate and the role of SEO. Because Google is always watching.
Google is always watching. And in 2025, they finally dropped the hammer. We called it the Great Content Detection Reckoning.
That sounds appropriately ominous.
It was, especially for the slop peddlers. A website that had relied on mass-producing thousands of purely AI-generated articles lost 50–70% of their visibility overnight. Google explicitly started penalizing scaled content abuse.
So the strategy of just using AI to churn out endless low-quality garbage is officially dead.
Dead and buried. And the so-called AI humanizer tools, things like Stealth GPT, that claim to rewrite AI text to evade detection, the expert view is that those are just treating the symptom, not the cure. They're trying to trick the detector.
So what is the cure? How do you do it right?
EAT.
EEAT.
It's Google's own framework for what it considers high-quality content. It stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness.
Okay.
Now, AI can fake expertise pretty well. It can scan the entire web and sound like it knows what it's talking about. But there's one thing it absolutely cannot fake.
Experience.
Experience.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't lived. It has never actually managed a project. It has never spoken to a frustrated client. It has never seen a marketing campaign fail and had to figure out why.
So how does the VAConnect model solve for EET?
Through that human rewrite process we talked about earlier. By having the VA go into that AI draft and add real firsthand experience, adding direct quotes from client interviews, including specific, real metrics, describing the actual lessons learned from a campaign execution.
We tried A/B testing this headline, and here's what happened. AI can't invent that authentically.
Never.
No.
And that is the human-in-the-loop workflow. The final content passes AI detection, not because it used some trick to fool the detector, but because it is genuinely human-enhanced.
It passes because it's real. That makes perfect sense. Okay, let's shift gears. I want to talk about the scary stuff. Security. Section 6.
This is often the final hurdle, the deal breaker for a lot of companies considering outsourcing.
Right. The first question is always, I'm sending my confidential data to South Africa. Is that safe? And in Europe especially, we have GDPR compliance to worry about.
You should worry about it. GDPR fines can be up to 20 million euros. It is not a joke. And the standard freelancer model, the Upwork model, is a complete compliance nightmare.
Why is that?
Because your company data ends up on personal laptops, scattered all over the world. There are no audit trails. The entire security model is based on trust me.
Trust me, I have antivirus software installed.
Exactly. VAConnect operates on a completely different model. They use what the guide calls a managed security standard.
Explain the infrastructure. They use a system called Bittrex 24, right?
Yes, Bittrex 24 is their cloud-based architecture. And the #1 rule is that nothing is ever stored locally on the VA's personal computer. Everything, documents, passwords, client data, lives in their secure cloud. Access is strictly role-based.
And if something goes wrong, say a VA leaves the company.
Access can be revoked instantly. The manager clicks one button and that person is locked out of the entire system. Their access to your data is gone in a second.
And what about the legal framework?
All VAs sign detailed NDAs that are enforceable under South African law, which has very strong intellectual property protections. And they have incredibly strict protocols for credential management.
So they're using password managers like LastPass or 1Password?
Yes. And there's a hard rule. VAs are never, ever allowed to handle raw credit card numbers or other sensitive financial data directly.
That makes me feel a lot better. And we talked about turnover earlier, but in this context, that institutional memory you mentioned is actually a security feature too.
It absolutely is. When a freelancer quits, they take all that knowledge with them. It's gone. When a VAConnect VA leaves, all the documentation, the SOPs, the project history, it all remains safely in the cloud, accessible to the team. And that stand-in system ensures the new person can step right in without missing a beat.
So you're not held hostage by one person holding all the keys to your kingdom.
You are never held hostage. The system is the asset, not any single individual.
Okay, I'm sold on the concept, but how do I actually do it? Section 7 is our implementation roadmap. If a listener is intrigued, what's the first step? How do they start?
The sources outline a really clear and sensible 12-month plan. It doesn't ask you to boil the ocean on day one. It starts with assessment in months 1 and 2.
So just auditing your own team roles first.
Yes, and calculating that true cost of employment we talked about earlier. You need to know your baseline. You need to look at your team and ask the hard question, who is doing $20 an hour work for $50 an hour pay?
Then we move into months 3 and 4, the pilot.
Don't jump into the deep end and hire 3 full-time people. Start with a half-day package. That's 80 hours a month. It's a small, controlled experiment.
And what's the cost for that pilot package?
It's 20,000 Rand, which is roughly 1,085 USD.
For 80 hours of work, that is a very, very low-risk way to test this entire model out.
Incredibly low risk.
Yeah.
And VAConnect uses what they call a strategy-first approach here. It starts with a strategic Zoom meeting to discuss goals and fit, not just a faceless transaction.
So you focus on good onboarding, creating those initial standard operating procedures. Then what happens in months 5 and 6?
Optimization. This is where you hand over the keys to the AI tools. And please, the source is really emphatic about this. Don't skimp on the 20-month ChatGPT Plus subscription for your VA.
It literally pays for itself in the first hour of save time.
It really does. This is also where you start implementing Zapier automations to connect different apps. You get the whole machine humming.
And finally, you get to months 10 through 12, integration.
This is where you look at the data, you evaluate the success of the pilot, and maybe you decide to move to a permanent placement for a VA who has become absolutely indispensable to your operations. This is where you calculate your actual hard dollar ROI.
And the guide lists some crucial do's and don'ts for success here that I think are worth highlighting.
The biggest don't is the most important. Do not treat your VA as cheap labor. If you have that mindset, you will fail.
So don't just throw tasks at them without context. Don't micromanage.
Don't micromanage, but also don't abdicate. Don't just ignore them. The do is invest in building a real relationship. Provide them with clear, detailed documentation. Encourage them to use the VA varsity training resources. If you treat them like a valued partner, you'll get a partner's level of commitment and creativity. If you treat them like a commodity, you'll get commodity-level work.
It's the golden rule of management, really. It applies anywhere in the world.
It absolutely is.
So to bring this all home, we started this deep dive with the outsourcing recession of 2025. We realized it wasn't a failure of AI itself, but a complete failure of expectations and strategy.
And a failure of the old cheap labor at all costs model.
The future of work isn't about robots replacing us. It's not the dystopian future we were all promised.
No, the Salford ROI model makes it incredibly clear. The future is about the better deployment of human talent, specifically that South African dark horse talent, plus better tools like AI. It's a partnership.
And the companies that are figuring this out right now, what's the outcome for them?
They are getting 3x the output for a fraction of the cost. They're the ones who are thriving in the 2026 economy, and the ones who don't get it. They're stuck with massively inflated local salaries, or they're churning out that AI slop that Google is actively deleting from the internet.
It's a very stark choice when you lay it out like that.
The recession of 2025 killed the fantasy of the simple robot takeover. 2026 is all about building the intelligent partnership.
Intelligent partnership. I love that. So here is the thought I want to leave you with, listener. Look at your own operations. Look at your own team, your own daily tasks. Are you outsourcing intelligently? Are you building a partnership? Or are you still just hiring strangers from a database and hoping for the best?
And are you giving your team, wherever they are, the tools and the trust they need to truly succeed?
Exactly. The tools, the trust, and the training. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the new world of work. We'll catch you on the next one.